Hi, I'm Matt. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's video is actually made by request. I've had several people ask me about the equipment that I used, ask me to make a video about the equipment that I use. So that's what I'm going to do today. But I thought I would start with some of the books and resources I used to start my bread making journey. And I started with three different books. First one I got was Ken Forkish's Flour, Water, Salt, and Yeast. Great book, interesting guy. The information in here about how to handle the dough, mix the dough, it's great. Uh, this is the first one that I got. Next thing I did was I watched Apollonia Palan's masterclass. I haven't made any of her recipes yet, but very interesting series. Learned a lot about how to handle the dough. So then the next thing I got was her cookbook. Again, I've read it. I've not made any recipes out of her book yet. Ken Forkish's, I did make his pan campagne, the country French loaf recipe. I made that. It was great. This one, I've yet to make any of hers, but I am going to. And then the last book that I got was King Arthur's baking school book. And this book is awesome. It might be my favorite simply because it's got so many recipes in it, more than just bread. It has the bread recipes, it has cookie recipes, it has pastry recipes, and everything I've made out of it so far has turned out great. The cinnamon bun recipe, I made it, and it's the best I've ever had, even better than Cinnabon. And I'm not bragging; it was really that good. So they're the three books that I used. And then I just watched a ton of videos on YouTube and social media and educated myself and learned. Next thing is my starter jar. This is made by a company called Weck out of Germany. I like it. It's got a wide mouth and straight sides. When you're feeding this every day, if you're using a mason jar, it's got a narrow mouth and it's got the curved sides, and it gets to be a pain. It's doable, but it gets to be a pain in the neck. This is much easier. And like I said, if you're doing it every day, this is easier. This will hold 600 grams of fed starter without overflowing when it reaches its peak. So I start out with 200 grams of starter, 200 grams of flour, 200 grams of water. Mix it up. It'll be right here at this purple band. Purple band I got off of a bunch of asparagus. And every time I get asparagus, celery, broccoli, and it's got one of these bands on it, I keep them. That's what this is for. And this is to show me where I started after I fed it, and it shows me how much it's grown. So it came with two lids. It came with the glass lid for actual canning, and it came for a wood lid if you're going to use it as a container. It did have a rubber seal on it. I took the rubber seal off because if you put this on and you have the 600 grams and you seal it, later on, probably about 10 o'clock at night, all of a sudden you hear, and you'll hear that, and your lid will pop right off as the gas expands in the jar. But anyway, that's my sourdough jar. I'm doing this in order of how I make my bread, if you were wondering. So obviously you start with the starter. Okay, the next thing you're going to need is a digital scale. Or really any scale, I guess, but I have a digital one. It was inexpensive, 15, 20 bucks on Amazon. I am not one of the militant people that are going to, jump on somebody because they have a recipe where they're making cups. I got it basically because so many of the recipes are in grams. And it is easier to, grow and shrink down your recipe or to play with it a little bit with baker's percentages when it's all in grams as opposed to tablespoons and cups. But, if that's the way you want to go, that's fine. I know that, a lot of family recipes here in America are made with cups and tablespoons. I have a recipe that a friend gave me, and it's actually the measurements are an eggshell of milk. You know what? I'm not going to argue with the lady. I got my milk and my eggshell, and that's how I did it. But anyway, digital scale. Then you need a couple scrapers. This is my bench scraper. Okay, it's great for scraping the bench, but it's also great for cutting dough. And it's not sharp, so you can cut the dough, and you ain't going to cut yourself. The next is a bowl scraper. It's curved. You can really work in any bowl. You just depending on the curvature of the bowl, you just go up or down and it'll widen and, it'll change the radius by going up and down. This for scraping out the bowl. The next are these baker's mats. You can see I have a marble countertop. And if you try to put flour down and then go like this to smooth it out, all you do is wipe that flour right off of the marble. There's no way to get it to kind of adhere to the marble. It's just too hard, non-porous of a surface. So I got these bread mats on Amazon. The first one I got was this big one. I do get this out when I'm making big batches or if I'm going to be like baking like all day long. I'll use this guy, but it does get to be cumbersome trying to get it into the, you can see how big it is. Trying to get it cleaned in the sink, it's a lot. Well, it's not insurmountable, but still, if you're doing it day to day and you're only doing, a single batch, it's a little more than you might want to get into. So then I bought this little guy. This little guy is the one I use actually the most. This is enough for a single batch. And again, they're made of silicone, and there's temperature ratings. There's some, kitchen tips, and I've yet to use them. Though I do like the measurements here. It'll give you in inches. So if it tells you to roll something out to so many inches, you got it. It's got measurements on the side. So if you're doing croissants, I used, it tells you to roll it out to 18 inches. It's right here on your mat. You put it on the mat, roll it out. There you go. The great thing about this is when you put your flour down and you spread it, once you put the flour down, you can't get that thin layer off. I mean, so if you want to go with a really, really thin layer, put your flour down, spread it around, and brush off as much as you can, and there you go. And anyway, and it makes cleanup real easy because you work on this, just gather it up, tip it into the trash can, any excess, toss it in the sink, clean it up, and you're done. So there you go. Okay, next for mixing up my dough, I have a commercial KitchenAid mixer. There are a few different, it's very similar to the professional, but the commercial has a couple things. I don't know about the guts. There may be a difference in there. I don't know. I do know that it has the orange cord, which I'm sure is an OSHA regulations for a commercial kitchen. It does have this little protector here. I'm sure, again, that's for a commercial kitchen, so when you're sliding around, it doesn't bust your switch. And the next thing is, I know on the professional, there's a little plastic end cap on your raising lever here. This one doesn't have it. I'm sure that it was a complaint probably from commercial kitchens that it just breaks anyway. So this one is just a smooth steel little lever. It comes with your whisk, your paddle, and your dough hook. And I just use the dough hook for the most part. I mean, when I'm making cookies and stuff, obviously I use this stuff, but this guy gets used the most. One thing I did find about this compared to my tilt back is it is exceedingly quiet. I only use this on number one for mixing my dough. I'll let it run for 10 minutes. So I do a hybrid. When I first started making bread, I was doing it all kneading by hand. Then I switched to, when I started making more and bigger batches, I switched to using the machine. And I did start to see a deterioration in the quality of my oven spring and my ear. So then what I did was I switched a little bit, and now what I do is I'll do 10 minutes in here, and I'll do 4 or 5 minutes of hand kneading after that, and I still get a good oven spring, a good ear. So that's my mixer. Next is my bannetons or proof baskets. I have several different sizes. These are the ones I use the most. This is the petard, this is the bowl, or the oval and the round. These will both hold, I put about 750 grams. That's what my loaves are, unbaked, 750 grams about. So that's what these two are for. This little guy here is for making, like if you're going to have a dinner party, an actual sit down at the table type of dinner party, and you wanted to have a little loaf of bread for each couple like you do in a restaurant. I'm sure you've seen it when they bring it to you on a little cutting board with the knife stuck in the top. I use this to make that kind of little loaf of my sourdough. This one is a little round. You can make them just to have the little round loaves, but I usually use this to make my soup bread bowls in. And lastly, this I use for making my like a French country loaf. Another, the ones that are long and kind of torpedo shaped. That's what I use this one for. A lot of people refer to this as a cover, but it is not a cover. It's actually the liner for your banneton basket. And what you'll do is you'll flour this and put your loaf in on top and then cover it with something else. I use the plastic shower cap covers that you can get on Amazon or whatever. Circa 1970, that's what they've been around since then. But that's what I use. After these build up, they get a little buildup of flour. You don't need to wash them; just scrape out any excess. The only thing is you do want to let them completely dry before you stack them back up when you're done with them. So what I like to do is I'll stack them around my oven, even on my stovetop. The heat from the oven running dries them out pretty quick. So I'll finish my bacon an hour or two later. I can just stack them and put them away. The other thing is that you don't have to bake with the liner in. You can bake this. And if you've ever seen the bread that looks like it's got a spiral on the top, that's how they did it. You put flour in here, you put your bread directly into it, cover it, and let it proof overnight, and there you go. I know some people use rice flour. I tried it. I do not like it. I don't like the texture of it. So I just use my regular bread flour. I flour it up. And it might stick a little bit more than rice flour, but as long as you're just a little bit patient, it'll come out. I've yet to have a problem where I've ruined the loaf, either doing it like this or in here. Frankly, you can actually just drop like that, and sometimes it'll just fall right out. But anyway, they're my Banneton baskets. All of these were on Amazon. Some I bought, some my wife bought for me. Another thing I have that I bought, this is what they call a flour sack. I think they call them towels or rags. These have a tighter weave than your tea towels. And I'll use this if I'm doing a countertop proof where I'm not overnight proofing it. I will cover it with this rather than a tea towel. I don't wet it, and I do find that my dough does not dry out when I cover it with this. Now, I don't cover it with a single layer either. I'll double it up. I have a few of these, so if I needed 2 of these to cover up whatever I'm baking, I'll do that. Then I have this. This is a proofing container. It's actually sold, I believe, as a pizza dough proofing container. It's plastic. It's got the lid, fits pretty tight, but not airtight. And inside, I have my baguette cloth. I forget the French name for it. But what I'll do is it comes a little bit longer than it is. And you'll see I cut the edge. I cut the edge so that it fits nicely into this proof basket. And what I'll do is I'll lay it like this, and I'll lay my baguettes, and you kind of ten up like this in between each one. Okay. And the more you use this without washing it, actually, the better it works. It'll start to get I don't know if you can see it, but it's got like a little layer of flour on it. The more it has on there, the more it's seasoned, the better it works. So I use this for proofing my baguettes, and then this whole thing will just go in the refrigerator overnight. Come in the morning, and I just pick them up, dip them in my cornmeal, score them, and I lay them into my Pit Boss Dutch oven. All right, so next, after the proofing's done, it's time to get the bread into the Dutch ovens and into the oven. I have these bread mats. Okay, they're actually called the bread mat. I got them on Rosehill sourdough. They're a little bit expensive. I think it was $25 for 2, $50 for. I got 4 of them. And then this is my Lazy Susan. It's made by Pampered Chef. My wife bought this years ago, and it just sat around. We never really did anything with it. But then when I started baking, I'm like, hey, you know what? That thing will be perfect. So, I put this on top. If you've seen on my videos, I turn it out onto this. This is my bread mat. This is like a screen material. It's not smooth, but that's good. It's easy to clean. They're very tough. But the screen material gives like a thermal break between your Dutch oven and your dough. It stops the bottom from getting too overdone. All right. So there's those. And then next would be my lame for scoring. Now, originally I had one of the traditional lames, but it has this curved blade on it, which I didn't like working with. The cover comes off all the time. So I was always afraid it was going to come off in the drawer and cut myself. So I'd seen people using this, and I'm like, boy, that really looks sharp. I'd like to get me one of them. So this is made by Wire Monkey. You can't get it on Amazon. You do have to go to their actual website. It's got a nice wood cover, and it's got a magnet that holds the cover on. So, you got to give it a decent tug to pull it off. There's 2 magnets on the back. You can just pop it right onto your fridge. So that's where I actually keep mine, right up there on the fridge. One note, is when you're going to replace your blade and then put the cover on before. There's a little wood nut here. You want to put the blade, put the cover, then put your little wood nut on. Okay. The reason being is that without that cover on, when you go like this, there's a chance your finger could slip right off and you'll cut yourself. And you will cut yourself deep in a very short period of time with this guy. Okay. And lastly is going to be the Dutch ovens. I have 4 of them that I use for bread baking. These are my Le Crusettes. These are strictly for bread baking. They're for making my rounds or bowls. Okay. If you look inside, they have little raised ridges that helps the bottom from coming up too done. These 2 usually go on. I can fit all 4 of these into my oven. These 2 go on the bottom rack all the way on the bottom. And then I'm able to set the second rack so that these 2 just fit. So these 2 would go on the bottom, and these are the ones that were getting too done. So that's the primary reason I bought those bread mats. So they go in here. And then I have my 2 ovals. Now this one's made by Zakarian by Dash. I got it on Amazon. This was like $150. It's nice. It's got a coated surface on the inside and the outside. And it actually is supposed to be like this, like a roaster pot, with the top being a griddle top. What I do is I flip it over. Now the base is actually my lid. My loaf goes there. Why do I do that? Because it's a heck of a lot easier to get my dough onto here rather than trying to get it down into here. Okay. That's this one. This is the first one that I got. And then shortly after I got this one, I saw this is made by Pit Boss. Okay, and again, this one's the same thing. It's supposed to be used like this, with the top being a griddle top, and I flip it over and use it like this. The real nice thing about this one is a lot heavier than this one. What I do like about this one, though, is that it's got the straight sides, so I can actually take my mini baguettes and lay them in here 2 at a time and bake my baguettes in them. Okay. And if you're working with these, you really need to get yourself some good heavy duty oven gauntlet mitts, not using your little hot plate grabber like this. You need to have a gauntlet one so you keep your sleeves down, and when you pull your gauntlet on, you're covered all the way up and down. If you accidentally touch the side of the oven or you touch the side of your Dutch ovens, you're not going to burn your forearms and stuff. And the also thing is that because these are heavy, having them be mitts gives you the dexterity to get in and get a good grab on them. It hasn't happened to me, but I have seen pictures of people that dropped their Dutch ovens on their oven door and just shattered that glass front of their oven door. So these are inexpensive. They're made by Kingsford. There's a bunch of different brands out there. I got the Kingsford ones. They were cheap. I think they were maybe $15-20. I think I'm at Lowe's. They work really good. All right. And that's the equipment that I use. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative. Please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And thank you.